So this is a presentation about Wilhelm Maximilian Wundt, or Wundt. He was a physician, a philosopher, a professor, and a psychologist. He was a very accomplished person. Um, so you may be asking who this person is. Well, their name is Wilhelm Maximilian Wundt. They were born August 16th in 1832, near to that place in Germany. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. And they died in that place in Germany, and as you can see, we have Wundt himself here. We have the place in which he was born, and a map location of where he died. That's depressing. There's no actual thing saying a lot about his childhood, at least not that I could find, but we do know a lot about his academic life. And he would earn a medical degree at the University of Heidelberg in 1856. And he would study with a couple fairly famous psychologists. I almost said psychiatrists there, that's a different thing. He would study with quite a few different people at this point in time, and he would also start writing one of the first textbooks that he did in his academic career. And at one point, he would be offered to help teach one of the first psychology courses at the University of Heidelberg. Later in life, he would study with more experimental methods drawn from natural sciences. He would do a lot of lectures on subjects, and the interesting thing is that he would often have his students stand around him as he would sit down and show everyone what was going on. And I did have a picture of this, but because of technical issues, I had to. It's gone. It's very gone. So, sorry about that, but there was a very nice picture of him sitting down as everyone else was standing, and their knees were clearly aching because it looked like they had been there for what could be hours. Because from what I've read about the Wundt, he liked to talk, even though he was fairly introverted when he got the chance to talk. Boy, would he talk. That's probably why he was such a successful writer when it comes to textbooks and stuff like that, is because he had some pretty great social skills and some pretty great vocabulary to go along with it, along with the just genius that was his brain. Sorry, I don't know. This guy's just incredible. So Wundt would be the first to establish a psychology laboratory, and this is really awesome because one of the closer things that we had to that before was back in ancient to medieval China. Governors and high positions in government would take what is essentially like the beta version of a psychological test, just to make sure they wouldn't spend China's budget on fat ladies, because I don't know, they had a weird thing with that in China at the time. Now, you may be asking, why is Wundt important? And I kind of just answered that for you. But just to streamline it, he installed the first psychological laboratory in the world at the University of Leipzig. He published not just the principles of physiological psychology, which is considered to be the first psychology textbook, but he did a whole slew of books about that. Like, you could probably fill a shelf in a library just with what he wrote. And he taught a lot of people about psychology, and he worked with a lot of very famous people, including Titchener. Moving on. So how Wundt was influential, and what their contribution to the scientific field, is that he would talk a lot about immediate and mediate experiences, which I'll get into more later. He studied a lot of structuralism with Edward B. Titchener, who, again, he was somewhat of a mentor to, and he's often referred to as the father of modern psychology. So, this system of psychology, would involve immediate experiences. So, the content of psychological experience in its immediate nature, not modified by abstraction and or reflection. To put that into more simple terms, the experience as it happens without the bias of hindsight. Or if you're going to put it into like computer terms, you're looking for the raw data instead of the interpretation of the raw data. Um, you know, and he would have people describe things as they're happening. So, for example, a toothache, he would want people to describe what's happening in the toothache, not their interpretation of what's happening, but what is happening as it's happening. So, like, um, to quote myself, when I actually had, I had to have surgery on my teeth, it's a throbbing, sharp pain. I feel like my tooth is about to explode. Yeah, that was not a fun day. Meanwhile, immediate experiences are just conceptions and memories of experiences. So, for example, saying, I have a toothache. It's a little bit weird, and it's unfortunate that immediate and mediate are such similar words that it could make this whole thing confusing. But really, mediate is less descriptive. It's talking usually in past tense. Um, well, not usually, it's always talking in past tense. If it was talking in future tense, that would be amazing, but it's not. Um, and it's including bias from hindsight and from thinking about things. Wow, this slide got messed up. Okay, so their findings have haven't really been criticized as far as I can tell. Uh, Although they have been expanded upon a lot, and people have re-researched a lot and redone his experiments a lot. But he was Wilhelm was the main inspiration for and mentor of psychologist Edward Bradford Titchener, who was at the same psychology lab, and although they didn't really talk together or work together all too much, again, Wundt being a bit of a introvert himself, um, it was very difficult for them to talk, not only because of Wundt not really wanting to talk to anyone, or work schedule or birthday party or something. um, it's believed though that Titchener did draw a lot of inspiration from and learned a huge amount from the work of Wilhelm Wundt. So why I chose this psychologist in particular um, is because of the Wilhelm scream. I just thought it was a funny coincidence, because the Wilhelm scream is a sound effect that's been used in TV shows and film ever since 1951, starting with the film Distant Drums, which is... I've never even seen that or heard of that film. But it's a stock sound effect that's been used in a ton of movies. Like, it's used at least once in every Star Wars movie. It's used twice in the Indiana Jones films. It has been used in Poltergeist, Reservoir Dogs, Disney's Aladdin, Kill Bill, the 2005's King Kong, Shrek, and even Toy Story. And it's from the count that I got from Britannica, it's been used in about 600 different films and counting, and that was from a sort of census that was done in 2016. So the real amount we have no idea, but it's there. And just a quick example there. And I didn't know a lot about Wilhelm Wundt beforehand, because a lot of what was happening in the class skipped over it a bit, even though I feel like it was talked about a lot. We really skipped over the person himself. But I think he was important because he was one of the first few people, if not the first person, to look deeper into the subject of psychology. And it was also really interesting just to learn um, about this person and how cool he actually was. Um, I also learned that you can't leave PowerPoint open for too long um, because it will destroy itself. So that was a fun experience, and that explains why everything on this looks terrible. Um, and then these are some sources, and that's all I got. But thank you so much for listening to me do this thing. Thank thank you for listening. Um, I will get this to you as soon as I can, and happy holidays.